Okay, thank you, Bolida. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this South West Wales Corporate Joint Committee Overview and Scrutiny Subcommittee virtual MS Teams meeting on Monday, the 19th of January, still January 2026. So, agenda item 1, Chair's announcements. Just a couple of reminders for everyone, please. The meeting's being recorded. Please ensure your phones are switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. If you could raise your hand using an electronic hand, that will help me out certainly because it'll put you in order as well. And I will get to you, I promise. That we are having problems with the Welsh translation at the moment, but when that is available, should members wish to speak in Welsh, please do so. I have nothing else in announcements apart from welcome back, which seems like it's less than a week since I've seen you all, and maybe it is. Okay, so item 2, declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations they would like to make? Bear with me a second. Sorry, my screen isn't showing everyone. I can see everyone. I can see no hands up, so I'm going to assume there are no declarations of interest and move to our next item. So our next item is supposed to be agenda item 3, budget for financial year 2026-27, but we've been requested to move that item because the officer isn't available to introduce it, which is fine. I'm happy to do that. And just to let you all know, that's what we're going to do. I hope Stuart's been given that heads up because we're going to move on to agenda item 4, which is the South West Wales Regional Transport Delivery Plan. There are appendices 1, 2, and 3, which are private pages, and if there are questions on those, we will need to move this to a private session. But otherwise, we're going to look at the recommendation, page 15, and we are required to vote on a recommendation for this. So that's the overview. This is where we are. Stuart, is Stuart on the call? Can I hand over to Stuart, or is somebody taking his place? Alison, have I done that on?
No, that's fine. I'll introduce in true style with it's myself and Lee. I sort of introduce and hand over for that kind of double act on there. But yeah, this
Excellent.
is the next iteration really. You'll have had a number of various presentations on the regional transport plan, the process we've been going through from early inception through to the stage when we were seeking views on the approval of the regional transport plan itself. And we're now at the stage where we've developed a year 1 delivery plan and the sort of indicative sort of programs that lie ahead for delivery on there. And as you've covered those, the elements, the detail of those elements are in private session. But if I hand over to Lee just to introduce and give a bit more background on it, if that's okay, Chair. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Have they taken you to the desert? Have you been stranded? What's going on with you there?
I'm just somewhere warm. I'm just somewhere warmer for a bit. That's.
Oh, well, that's lovely. Nice. I'm glad to hear somebody's warm. I mean, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, carry on, please.
Lee, you're on mute at the moment.
Yeah, you're on mute, Lee.
There we go. Hopefully you can hear me now, Chair. There we go. Good. I think I got muted when I first came on, so apologies for that. Yeah, as Stuart says, obviously long iteration. We've I think been to this committee 4 times now, or even 5 times over the development of the regional transport plan. The starting point is we're pleased to report that the regional transport plan has actually been approved by the Welsh Government. So the policy side of the exercise is now live. Wendy Walters has kindly written out to all the chief execs to inform them that it's now live policy, and that will start to inform things such as planning decisions and such like in those sort of decision-making spaces. So that's now live. Obviously, we've now, as Stuart says, concentrated in some detail on the schemes. I think the report, Chair, is pretty self-explanatory in terms of what you've seen before. Obviously, there's a number of moving parts to this, particularly around the grant funding. We're obviously still operating on the basis of the Welsh Government budget process playing out as officials have briefed us. Obviously, we think that's going to occur. So 2 things there, I think, Chair, are important. First of all, we can say the budget has now been fixed, subject to the budget process, at 24.3 million. Obviously, that then gives us a number of things we can do with that money, and that's what we advising you about today and encouraging some discussion about. Also, there is the potential of securing funding for years 2 and 3 of what is notionally a 5-year programme, but obviously budget only for year 1 at this stage. But there is this option to roll some of those bigger schemes that are partially schemes that are just on the cusp of starting being constructed or delivered at the end of year 1. So that's all in train as well. So there is some longer term, medium term certainty about the budget as well, all being well. The other thing that we need to consider is that the CABSEC for Transport in North Wales has written to the region asking for commentary on what we would do if a significant amount of extra funding was delivered to the region in 26-27. We've got an update on that as we go through, Chair, but the principle is that we would spend a significant portion of that on the schemes that are of a regional nature, where there are cross boundary schemes in effect across the region. Obviously, some examples of that, some of the active travel schemes, they're going to be replicated in all the 4 authorities. We can boost the budget up of those. The other thing that we're seeing quite a need to develop, in the officers are seeing quite a need to develop further, Chair, is the metro. Now, obviously, we know that there's a lot of enthusiasm for the metro, and some work's been done already. What we're seeing there is the need to stitch all that together into a cogent case to push through the Welsh Government's business case procedures. We've been looking at that so far, I think, pretty much on the level of individual schemes and initiatives. But we do need to try, I think, and tie the rail and some of the trunk road initiatives into the wider programme and understand, what can be delivered and when and how quickly. So one of the elements there is to uplift the amount of funding on metro if we secure this additional money, and actually put the metro on a sound programme base as opposed to the individual schemes. The final matter that we would want to spend the additional money on, or recommending spending the additional money on, Chair, is to increase the delivery rate in effect. So there are a number of schemes that are planned for years 2 and 3 in particular, that if we got more money, effectively more resources, we could deliver those more quickly. So bringing those into the first year does relieve a certain amount of pressure. I think give the fact that the overall 5-year plan does have a bulge in the middle. And clearly bringing some of those schemes forward would assist us as we move forward, looking through the process the Welsh Government have put in place. We do need to conduct an annual review of this programme, so actually bringing some schemes forward is to our benefit. It allows us to move more quickly and more certainly in terms of those schemes that are likely to come forward at the moment in the middle years. So that's the update on that, Chair. I think just to update on the grant side of things, and Stuart may come back in here if I run into the depths of this. The process has now been set out by the Welsh Government for grant funding. 26-27, so next financial year, the money that's allocated to the schemes will still come to the individual local authorities, and obviously it's then for the local authorities to use that money on the schemes that the CJC have identified, but equally it's fair to say that the individual authorities will bear the risk of delivery next year. So clearly, it's for individual authorities to put their best foot forwards there, I say, and work to deliver the schemes at the best pace possible. When we get to 27-28, Welsh Government have committed to change some of the background legislation on grant funding to allow the funding to come to the CJC directly, or will then distribute it to the 4 authorities. Now, obviously, the issue that officers see in that interim arrangement is that we can't reset the programme across the region. So if one authority has a scheme that's not progressing very well, another authority can't pick up the shortfall and run with it if they've got a scheme that's at a suitable place, or vice versa. If one authority is seeing an overspend, there's a challenge there in terms of how we might want to reset the overall pot. It looks very difficult from the officer's viewpoint, Chair, that you can move the money around between the schemes and between the authorities. So I think that's one challenge that we do foresee coming forward. But obviously, we're now trying to move forward. Do believe, Stuart, you'll know more than this than I, but we're on the point of having a programme manager appointed now, at least on a part-time basis, to offer some coordination of the programme. So rather than me appearing every few months, there will be an officer in place to actually almost do the engagement with the Welsh Government and TFW on a day-to-day basis in terms of programme, etc. I think that's everything, Chair. I would just ask if Stuart could come back in just to cover off anything that I may have missed. But obviously, we're very keen that the Welsh Government get our final programme at the end of the month after the full CJC meeting, and then approve it quite quickly in February and March, so the arrangements for the 1st of April can be put into place.
Okay, Lee. Well, thank you. I mean, if we do end up with an officer and we lose your regular appearances, I'm not sure how we're going to cope without you, but we'll power through. Yeah, no, that's fine. Stuart, did you want to come in and cover anything else off?
No, I think Lee's covered the main points really. What we feel is a fairly robust programme. We, probably won't hide our disappointment at the levels that we're working to on the budget, but ever hopeful that the levels may increase over time and that additional funding will come through. But we certainly feel we've got something robust to deliver with where we are, and a good idea of sort of a forward plan for the programme for the years ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. Yeah, I think if members could just thank you, Lee, as well for the narrative on that. It's really helpful and covers a lot of areas. If members have got questions that don't specifically relate to the budget side of things, then I could ask you to raise them now. That would be great. Councillor Jenkins, I think this is your first CJC Scrutiny Committee, so welcome, and apologies I didn't welcome you at the top of the meeting, but I hope you're going to enjoy as we try and scrutinise the CJC in a friendly way, but with all good intention. So over to you, Councillor Jenkins. How can we help?
Well, thank you, Chair, for that welcome, and I'm pleased to meet everyone who doesn't know me on this forum. Now, my question is, you mentioned the Metro there. Have we got any idea of the start date for that, please?
Simple enough question there. Stuart or Lee?
I mean, I'll let Lee come in on some elements, but really, the Metro itself, it's really quite a disparate programme. It sort of covers a number of different things that are things which are outside our control, and sort of sit within TFW and sort of Welsh Government, which are the rail elements. But there are a number of other elements in terms of the bus network, the connectivity to it, the active travel, the all the creating a web of sort of network, both for rural and urban areas that tie in with it. So it's all been kind of put under the umbrella of Metro. So it's not. So I suppose it's not, in some places they have the vision that Metro is almost a tram which runs up and down, but this is a kind of a multimodal, transport network that we're looking to develop. So I guess it's ongoing work. Moves have already been made to deliver some elements, and that will continue on through the length of the regional transport plan itself, and well beyond, really, for many years beyond, to get the full delivery. But Lee may have something to add.
I think so, Stuart. I mean, I think this is the thing that the officers have picked up on as we've been going through the programme development, Councillor Jenkins, that it is a series, as Stuart says, of quite disparate projects, some of which are very big ticket. There's a number of rail schemes that are very high cost, and obviously sit in the Transport for Wales envelope rather than the region's envelope, but equally there is the need to stitch all this together in an effective programme. I think that the challenge is that particularly some of the rail initiatives are such of such a scale, they are going to take a number of years to develop and deliver. And I think, as always, we know there's tensions with our colleagues from Network Rail that we're seeing across Wales, not just in the southwest, but also we know there's been a number of challenges in the Cardiff and the capital region, but also in North Wales as well, where there's been schemes that have been effectively essential schemes that Network Rail have progressed at not quite a snail's pace. I mean, that's probably unfair, but let's just say Network Rail have moved in steady steps rather than being proactive. I think it's fair to say. So, and there's commentary, in public forums about that. So I think we're just conscious there that we can be very ambitious, but actually we are beholden to those other parties. And I think that's the challenge, Chair, is bringing the Metro together as a single programme that actually binds in those third parties. That's what we're seeing at the moment. We've progressed a lot of individual schemes, but there's been perhaps no glue to stick it together. And that's what that's what we're thinking to concentrate on next year. So, sorry, we've not got a date for you, Councillor Jenkins, but I think there are some essential steps we need to take to get there.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jenkins. Did you want to come back?
Yeah, if I could, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Do you think you could, when you're looking at that, produce sort of a jigsaw map so that you can see what schemes are being done, what are missing, so that everybody can see them on a bit of paper, where it is, what's missing, so we can sort of colour coordinate it and then have a visual experience of it?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, that sounds quite doable, doesn't it, Stuart? I'm sure.
Yeah, to be honest, that sounds a good idea in terms of that representation of the different strands that are progressing. So welcome that. I think it's something we can take back and work on as officers across the region. So yeah, thank you. Good suggestion.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Jenkins. I think it's a really good suggestion, guys. Because apart from anything else, it would help the message coming through that you've started work on the Metro in many ways. So that we can get that message out. If we can get that message out to the public, that would be really good, wouldn't it? A really positive message to send. So thank you, Councillor Jenkins. Very helpful. Councillor Pearse, you've been very patient there. Can I bring you in, please?
Yeah, no problem, Cadeirydd, that's fine. Yeah, just a couple of things from me. Just picking up on the Metro discussion there. This is something I raised a few times in this forum and in Scrutiny in Neath Talbot. And, from my point of view, when I'm talking about Metro, I'm talking about the rail elements of Metro, and that is the big ticket stuff. That's the real transformative elements of it. And maybe if I contradict the chair slightly in my remarks, I do think we need to be a little bit careful in, mixing up those big transformative bits of work with what might be very good transport interventions that we're doing, that we might be branding as Metro, as part of the wider Metro project, but without those big transformative elements, obviously, you don't really see the huge benefit. So maybe just a little bit of caution there from me around that. But the only thing I wanted to just come in on Metro is what I've repeated before, and I'll repeat again, is our need to continue to make the political case for that large scale investment. And I don't think I can say it enough. And so for all the members on here, a lot of has been said, there's a lot of elements that need to come together to pull off this large scale rail investment. But that's the biggest thing to unlock that capacity, that those additional stations, all of the benefits that brings, access to employment, etc. And we all need to be making the case for that, even though it sits technically outside of the CJC's remit in terms of delivery. It's so important that the CJC continues to make the case for our partners in Welsh Government to deliver that. So there's that point made, and I got a couple of questions. So just in terms of the RTP itself and the funding envelope, that's mentioned. Just for clarity for me now, for year one, we've got this sort of 25 million headline figure, there or thereabouts, and then we've got 24.3 million funding. Is that basically what that gap looks like in year one? Just for clarity, or have I got those things a little bit mixed up? I don't want to delve into the schemes in the appendixes, to be honest, because I've got no concerns or queries on them, to be honest. But what I wanted to just pick up then, aside from that sort of funding gap, is we've referenced the need to pull in other funding sources. Now, obviously, some of that is a year one thing, but of course, as the project develops and delivery develops, that's going to be a key part of this. And this is just, I suppose, a question or a challenge around how we're going to identify those funding sources in the delivery plans going forward, because this is a bit of a live document, isn't it? And I think if a significant element of this money is going to be coming from, for example, we've referenced UK government funding, we've referenced Section 106 monies, etc. I think we do need to somehow try and pull that into the plan when there's a bit more certainty. So I just kind of want to put that out there, because I think it's really helpful for members to sort of understand the deliverability of some of this. And of course, when we're looking at prioritising and delivering schemes, if there's external funding available for a scheme, it changes the dynamic slightly, doesn't it? So I don't know if you can give me any insight on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Stuart will come in more generally, but I think just to confirm the budget position, Councillor Percy, the Welsh Government have indicated 24.3 million of grant for 26-27. Our programme at the moment is roughly around 25.5, so there's a 1.2 million notional gap there that we need to close. Now, clearly, there's other things as well as collecting external funding, so value engineering of the schemes, as you would expect. I mean, I think that's part of the programme project, the individual scheme development process, to look at the scope of the schemes, the costings. I think will obviously evolve as the schemes progress in more and get designed in more detail. Although there's obviously comments that scheme costs always go up, sensible engineering can actually bring the cost down, as you'll appreciate. So I think there is that delivery side to it, as well as the external funding. I think as well, and a small number of the schemes in there are very much around adding to things that developers, for instance, are going to deliver as part of their works for some of the major developments across the region. So there is that issue there where do we add to, for instance, let's say an active travel scheme is delivered by a developer, do we add to it to make it better, or simply do we put the money in, or not put the money in and simply deliver that the standard scheme in effect? So I think there is opportunities there, and it will be part of this programme manager's role to actually be having those discussions and cutting the cloth. I think we're all very conscious, aren't we, Stuart, at officer level, about where the city deal, perhaps the Swansea Bay City deal perhaps left us, where a lot of laudable work was done on creating jobs, economic activity, but it obviously didn't really include a great transport element there, which is, as you said a few seconds ago, is critical to actually allowing those jobs to evolve and be delivered. So I think we're conscious there that there's a number of schemes like that, Stuart, that are actually effecting economic change, even given the disappointment with the budget level. So I think once again we are looking actively at the reset of the regional economic strategy and the funding that's going to be around that. We are looking at the now devolved regional growth fund matters that obviously Welsh Government have got significantly more control over now that what used to be there's actually a UK government fund. So there are a number of funds out there, Chair, that the officers are actively exploring as we speak, and I think that's the key to this, is actually being ready to avail ourselves of any other opportunities that appear. There's the known knowns and almost the known unknowns, as it were. So I think that's the challenge, Councillor Percy, is is to basically just be bidding for everything as soon as we can if we've got a scheme that aligns really. Is that a fair commentary, Stuart? I mean, obviously you've been involved in the city deal longer than I, so.
Yeah, no, very much, and it's the adage of anything with engineering works, the job changes when a spade goes in the ground, I think is what they say. So there is a programme to sort of manage, hopefully drawing in external funding resources, but some things may be brought forward, some might slip as it goes. So I think we're close enough to have a good programme. And just really to go back on your comment as well, Councillor Percy, fully agree. The more noise, it would be good to be known as the noisy region that make as much noise to get the investment. We've been underinvested, heavily underinvested in terms of rail in this region for a long time. So getting that rail investment and then getting that connectivity out to tie into the rural areas and the semi-rural areas to bring it all together is the wider part of the metro. But we need that big bang transformational rail investment and need it to happen soon, both on the main line, the West Coast main line itself in terms of on there, and the potential for the kind of Swansea Bay Metro elements as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Councillor Percy. Did you want to come back in on that at all?
Briefly, if it's okay, Chair, just a follow up, I suppose. Yeah, I think that all does make sense, and I mean, given how close the level of funding is to the programme budget, as Stuart's mentioned, there will be some slippage of some schemes into year two. I'd be astonished if we deliver everything in year one, because you never get 100% delivery due. So I think we can certainly make a good start there. One of the things I wanted to come back to is the comment, I can't remember if it was Lee or Stuart mentioned at the start, around that lack of flexibility with us perhaps moving some money around when we have that responsibility for the grants. And I wonder if we could just come back to that for a minute, because I was trying to understand the implications of that, and I'm not sure I fully did understand that.
Okay, so just to remind members, that was about the different constituent members. So if there was a programme slipping in Pembrokeshire, not that anyone would in Pembrokeshire, but just I'm picking you out. It's random, David. It's not personal. But with the resources from the CJC that were more wider could be pulled into there. Is that what you're querying, Sean?
Yeah, and just trying to understand what we understand that lack of flexibility to be, and what we might be doing about that, because that just seems a little bit overly restrictive if we're going to get if we want delivery and not money sitting in allocations.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to clarify that. Thanks, Councillor Percy. I think it was you, Lee, that mentioned that. Do you want to come in? Yes,
indeed. Yeah, and Stuart, I'm sure, will comment as well. I think the challenge, Councillor Percy, is that the grant award will actually come to the individual authorities in year one. So Pembrokeshire will have a pot of money, Carmarthenshire, Neath, Talbot and Swansea, they'll each have their own pot of money. Now, there's nothing there to say that within an individual authority you can't cut the money up, not quite as you see fit, but to reprioritise with some agreement. The challenge becomes, I think, is if you scheme in one council area that's significantly under or overspending, is transferring the money sort of up and across and back down again to the authority that could benefit from that particular piece of funding. From what we see, that's going to be very difficult to achieve. The Welsh Government have set a process in train that really doesn't cover the fact that this would need to go up to the CJC, the discussions take place, and then the outcome of that to be filtered back down again. I'm not saying it's impossible to transfer funding from Authority 1 to Authority 2, but actually the Welsh Government's approach has made that seemingly very difficult. And I think, once again, it's something that the programme manager on appointment will need to get hold of and wrestle with. But I think the challenge is that we are, to some degree, each individual authority will be looking at their own programme, not quite in isolation, but in terms of the budget, they will be responsible in isolation for that chunk of the budget that's come to them. probably gets a little easier if the legislation changes and we get the CJC holding the money from 27, 28 onwards, because obviously discussions in this forum and other forums can take place, and actually, there will be a regular reporting mechanism, certainly on a quarterly basis, to say scheme 1's slipping, scheme 2's doing really well, and then there can be agreement to transfer the money across, either across boundary transfers in effect do come into play at that point. But it's just for year 1, Councillor Percy, it's likely to be very challenging to move money between the authorities.
Okay, thank you, Lee. Thank you, Councillor Percy. Bear with me, please, Derek. I know you're there. Sean, Stuart, did you want to come in on that at all, or do you think that? I think that's quite good.
I think that covers it. There's a few, obviously, with the establishment of the CJC, there's a few things where the detail and mechanics, and particularly before it becomes a kind of CJC pot of funding as such, then there's some challenges, but we'll continue to work with Welsh Government to overcome those anyway, just to ensure that it doesn't affect good solid delivery ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we can all recognise as members if somebody was going to suggest that funding that had gone to Carmarthenshire was going to be pumped into Pembrokeshire, my residents would be the first people on the phone to query that. Not that Pembrokeshire doesn't need as much support as it gets, you know what I mean. I think we can all sympathise with the current position as it stands. So thank you for explaining that in detail, and thanks for the question, Councillor Percy. So you've been incredibly patient. Councillor Cundy, would you like to come in now, please, with the question?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This might be a bit off the wall. I just wondering, we're talking obviously a lot about the trains and everything, but does this all link through to the idea of having spinal bus routes across everywhere? Because it seems to me that we really need to link everything up together. And you said that the delivery of these projects are going to be a little bit sporadic. I just wonder if there is a sort of underlying linkage right the way through. Well, that would help, please.
Okay, excellent question. Thank you, Councillor Cundy. Lee, do you want to take that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, I do think that the real challenge is obviously we're still in the throes of the bus network development exercise that TfW are conducting for the bus franchising. So I think that's the real challenge, Chair. We know that TfW are up against this time-wise in terms of setting the network up. I think the real challenge that we've seen, and we've seen some of the responses that we had on the consultation, Councillor Cundy, to the bus network, clearly a large proportion of those responses said, well, discussion about the existing network or what replaces the existing network when franchising starts is fine, but actually where does this end up? And I think that is the important point. Actually, once again, it's very much about the authorities actually putting our best foot forward, lobbying for those extra bus services, those extra routes and so on. I think there are things in the investment program that will allow that to occur. There's bus priority, there's investment in information provision, etc., that will allow this to occur. There's also significant investment across the 5-year program. Obviously, once again, given what I said about the challenges of working with the colleagues in the rail industry, they may not appear in year 1, but certainly we'd hope as the bus network stabilises on franchising that a number of those interchange points can improve. And actually, there are a number of those. There's a couple of those that are already being worked on in some detail. So at Milford Haven and Llanelli are being worked on in detail already, and those detailed engagement with the rail industry is taking place. So there are improvements there that are working through. There are improvements that are planned as well for the towards the middle and end of the 5-year program. And I think that's the key for us, is investing the region's funds perhaps in where we can join those journeys up. Obviously, we've got no direct control over the bus network in 18 months, 2 years' time. That will be TfW. But once again, it's a matter of allowing everybody who uses the public transport network to jump from bus to the train and back again. And I think that's the key really from a regional perspective, is getting those two networks to work together. We've seen, for example, Welsh Government, TfW have made this experiment where you can buy a rail ticket to St David's, alight in Carmarthen or Haverford and catch the bus over to St David's. And I think TfW are very keen to roll that out further, so you could have a virtual station in your local community, where you could use a single ticket all the way through. So that seems to be working in St David's, and working pretty well. So I think there's lots of opportunities there, but it takes the investment, and I think we've been quite careful to target the investment at things that join up the journeys. So I think that's probably the key to this, if I may, Councillor Cundy, is trying to join the journeys up, and keep engaged in that network development conversation for the buses in particular. Is that fair,
Okay,
Stuart?
thanks.
Is that?
Yeah, I think if I could just add to it, Councillor Cundy, I mean, we spoke about rail and the desperate need for investment, and the really strong, compelling business case for rail investment, which sits there. But certainly the importance of the bus network, the amount of passengers it carries, vastly outnumbers the sort of even the growth numbers that rail would carry. It's an extremely important element to the connectivity, and how we bring that together so that it, has got the reliability, the better connectivity, is sort of part of, a more a network which can give people the confidence to use it, and hopefully from that will then grow. So I think having those routes and the spine networks and things developed and delivered will be really important part of the transport mix for us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Lee. Councillor Cundy, did you want to come back?
No, I thought that was an excellent answer. I mean, that's what it's all about, is connectivity, being able to get from A to B easily. And at the moment, once you get past Swansea, we're really stuck down this area. So, it's really, really important that connectivity. And it's nice to know that you are thinking of that through the design as well, which is great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Cundy. I can't see any other hands up. I do have a question. You mentioned if you would have conversations, Lee, with government, if there was extra funding came down the road, what would you do with it if earlier on in the conversation? And on the similar point, really, to Councillor Cundy, our network depends on rural roads, and our road network, certainly in Carmarthenshire, is massive, and obviously the number of, with the climate change and the terrible weather that we have as a result of that now, our roads are suffering quite badly in terms of potholes and access, which is isolating communities. There's several examples I could quote if I was going to be parochial, but just hopefully you get the point. I mean, I was surprised you didn't mention maintaining some of the existing network in terms of what would be doing with the funding, because that might be an idea. Just could you feedback on that, please?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, I think some of the funding is dedicated to maintenance. I mean, there are items within the appendices that we may not want to talk about in the public session, but clearly could talk about in a closed session, given the sort of the strictures that have been placed on us by the Welsh Government. But the reality is, Chair, that there is an element of funding there to bring particularly things such as weak bridges up to standard, is one element of the programme that's in there and looking to be funded next year. There is obviously a maintenance deficit, and Stuart, this really is your rather than mine, but I think, as always, Chair, it's a matter of fighting the battles we can win, perhaps, but certainly weak bridges seem to be an area to invest in. I think there's a challenge there about climate resilience, and there is some work being done around that as well. Once again, we are heavily reliant on third parties, the rail industry, the trunk road agency, they provide the spines of the network. So once again, the disruption is significant if they fail or go down for maintenance reasons, and we are continually pushing both trunk road and the rail industry about the resilience of the network. Is that fair, Stuart? I mean, I think there's been a lot of sort of challenges. I know in Swansea in the last few weeks, hasn't there, over maintenance and resilience issues.
Across the board, we've had one of those winters which has been very wet and then followed by some very cold weather. So as you say, the potholes have ravaged the kind of nation's sort of roads, really. I think not just limited to Wales, but it's a dreadful mix of weather conditions to get that. But yeah, the kind of the pot of funding here is not sort of as aimed at the kind of maintenance side. It does have an element which is the resilient roads, in terms of particularly addressing areas where either there's structural weaknesses or areas that are prone to flooding, which is then sort of leading to communities being cut off. But I think it's a separate pot of funding. It's the things like the Welsh Government, the local borrowing initiative and things like that, and the general capital funding allocations. Across the UK, there are backlogs in terms of highway maintenance, and it's with my sort of highways hat on, it very much does need more investment coming through. But this is probably not the kind of conduit that we would normally sort of follow in terms of for the bulk of the funding. So just as I say, just some elements through the resilient roads element, but I think it is. I think no one can argue against the need for that investment, and it gets particularly prominent at this time of year. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Stuart and Lee, for that response. I appreciate it, and I understand it's slightly separate, but hopefully connected in the long term, and then we can all stay connected. Because, all right, lovely. So, Alison, I believe we have to vote to recommend this goes through. Is that
yes,
correct?
Please, Chair. Yes.
So could I invite somebody to propose, please, that we accept this? Thank you, Councillor Cundy. And do I have a seconder?
Yeah, happy to look at those.
Thank you, Diolch yn fawr, Councillor Percy. So we've we'd all vote, please. If we're in favour, could you raise your hand electronically, ideally? Great, thank you. As well.
Yes, Chair,
thank you.
Passed.
That's passed. Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. And so we are going to move on. If I just return to the front sheet, bear with me. So we have the thank you, Stuart. Sorry, and thank you, Lee, for that. You're welcome to stay, or if you want to move, you can. The subcommittee highlight report next, number 5. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. The purpose
thank you.
Can you hear me okay there? Thank you. The purpose of the report really is to provide members with an update of the progress made against the functions of the CJC and aligned with the 3 wellbeing objectives. If you recall, we brought the report initially as a first draft really to the committee in November. And again, the items are noted. So whilst I'm going to say there's no significant change, there is in terms of progress under those items. So I'm glad to say that in terms of risk, there's no further risk of what we've discussed previously under item 4. But we are pursuing again in aligning really our statutory duties, ensuring that we are complying. So we've got items there in terms of we're continuing to move forward with the delivery agreement process. And again, we're working with Welsh Government then to draw down any associated funding to those functions as well. In terms of outcomes, again, in terms of economic development, we have added an item there. It's the UK Research and Innovation Local Innovation Partnership Fund, which we brought to committee on the 13th for endorsement. So again, we're taking that report really as a bid proposal to CJC on the 27th. And again, that works in tandem then with our investment strategy and prospectus that we're working on as well. So we would be looking at bringing those reports back in March then in terms of a further update from an economic sense. And as we've heard today from Stuart and the team, we are working on that first year programme for the Regional Transport Delivery Programme. So again, that is an update of where we are on that item as well. So that's going to CJC on the 27th. So really, the progress is moving forward, and the efforts from all the team is great, and it's recognised really in what we've done to sort of look at our priorities for 26, 27 as well. So unless there's any questions, I'm happy we can take them.
Okay, thank you, Christy. Apologies I didn't introduce you at the start of the item. But there we are. I'll try and remember next time, I promise. Councillor Percy, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just a question on page 6. So this is in relation to the SDP preparation.
Yep.
And just trying to get some clarity here as to kind of where we are, I suppose. It states there that there's a potential grant from Welsh Government, which is released when we submit the delivery agreement. And then we've also got in the papers, when we look at the budget, a statement that we can't submit the delivery agreement until we've demonstrated the funding to develop the SDP further. So are we in a stalemate position with this at the moment, where we're not going to make any further progress until either Welsh Government release funding or we decide to allocate funding?
In terms of the grant funding, sorry, Nicola, if you want to come in first, I'm happy for you to take it. I just want to give the background really of where we've got from Welsh Government really. So in terms of the grant funding, we were advised by the Cabinet Secretary back in March what funding allocation would be coming through, and then we were further advised then from Welsh Government directors in June of further funding. So in that notification in June, we were advised that there would be funding towards the SDP in terms of the delivery agreement development, with further details of how we'd be able to claim and gain that information on the grant. So again, Nicola and her team have worked with officers to try and get that detail, and we continue to do so. And very much in line with the other CJCs, we're taking on board their approach and any lessons learned from them as well. And what we've been told to date is that in terms of that allocation, it was a £400,000 allocation. There was no detail given at that time in terms of how it would be allocated. But what we've since been told that 100,000 would be able to be claimed for as a part of an incentivised option, really, that we can apply for that if we can demonstrate the draft agreement has been approved, and then on submittance of the final delivery agreement for approval by the 31st of March 2026. So that's my background. Nicola, if you want to expand on anything.
I don't know if you want me to come in, Chair. I was just going to,
yeah, absolutely, go for it. That's fine.
Yeah, I was just going to sort of say something similar to Christy. So there's two opportunities to claim £100,000 each, 200 in total. Once upon the provision of the draft delivery agreement ready for consultation and submission to Welsh Government, and then another 100,000 once that delivery agreement has been approved. I do understand the concerns that were raised by this scrutiny committee last week, because the budget does not allocate additional resources to the planning programme to deliver the SDP. What we have said instead is that we will build it into a medium-term financial plan, which will be developed with the officers within the CJC as well as members, and it may well then allow us to ramp up the staff resource for the SDP going forward. And that proposed way forward has been endorsed in the other two regions who've progressed with their SDP. So it's not something that is unusual and has been supported by Welsh Government. And what we will do as well is we will continue to lobby Welsh Government for that funding, because the lobbying hasn't provided all of the funding to date, but it has resulted in a sort of incremental release of funds to enable us to move forward. So we will continue to do that to ensure that we maximise the amount of external funding that is made available, but it will all be included within the medium-term financial plan.
Okay, thank you for that, Nicola. That's very helpful. Councillor Percy, did you want to come back in?
Yeah, yes, please, if that's okay, Chair, and I appreciate the background from Christy and Nicola there, but I don't think it answers my question, unfortunately. The challenge I've got is, you know, if I read the papers in front of us today, we need to submit the document by the 31st of March, and we can't submit that document unless we can demonstrate we can meet the costs of developing the SDP. And our proposed budget, I know I'm jumping to the budget item, but our proposed budget does not allocate that funding, and we can't access the grant until we've submitted it. So it feels like we're in a stalemate situation here, where the decision that the CJC has recommended to it in terms of budget isn't going to allow things to progress. We don't have access to the grant funding at the moment, so I don't see how we're going to meet the deadline of submitting the document on time. If we're going to wait for a medium-term financial plan to be developed, that doesn't seem to ring. I can't reconcile that.
Thank you, Councillor Percy. Thank you for mentioning the letter we sent Nicola to the CJC last week, which we did. Despite that, the CJC did approve the delivery agreement, probably because of the statutory requirements, but we have yet to have our response from them as to why they did that. But I would like to just emphasise Councillor Percy's point, really. I mean, you're supposed to be showing how you're going to spend, that it's fully funded, and it's not fully funded and you're carrying on with it, is a very brief summary of the position, and that's why we found ourselves in a difficult position last week. Over to you, Nicola. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. No, I completely understand, and the original position of officers when we were trying to identify a way forward was exactly the same as that expressed by both yourself and Councillor Percy, because the delivery agreement is supposed to outline the community involvement scheme, the resources you need in order to deliver the SDP, as well as the timescale that you're going to deliver it. And we were in a position where we said, well, if we haven't got the funding agreed, how can we identify that we're going to have all of those resources in place? So we didn't think that we would be able to submit the delivery agreement to Welsh Government. Having said that, we saw that Cardiff Capital Region and Ambitious North Wales also both submitted their delivery agreement on the basis that they couldn't afford not to because of the statutory requirement associated with it. And you know, it became evident that there was funding released by Welsh Government, that at one point in time we were then, because we hadn't progressed at the same pace as them, we were effectively not allocated any of that funding. It was all allocated to the two other regions. Now, we've sort of considered, do we want to continue to put ourselves in that position going forward, where funding becomes incrementally available to those those authorities who have progressed? And do we want to, you know, sort of not progress and then potentially better our position in terms of being able to get access to funding as and when it comes forward in the future? So we are in a little bit of a tricky position. We need to ensure we're meeting our statutory requirements, and we need to make sure that we are not being left behind, and the funding that does come available in the future is allocated to the other two regions that have progressed. So I completely understand the concerns raised, and which is why that we are continuing to lobby Welsh Government for appropriate resources, and you know, we're doing our best to ensure that any funding that is released is allocated to us. But at the same time, we don't want to find ourselves in a position where funding is released, we haven't moved forward, and therefore we're not eligible to claim that funding. So it's a tricky position to be in, but it's the position that the two other regions have found themselves in. You know, we as I say, it is a risk, but I think it's a risk worth taking.
Okay, thank you, Nicola. That really helps, actually, certainly from my point of view, to the idea that we wouldn't be getting funding. The funding that we might be able to get would go to other regions if we didn't put a delivery agreement in. That's an important context that you've raised there this morning. Thank you for that. That really helps. Councillor Percy, did you want to come back at all, please?
Only with a brief comment, and I'll bring the rest up in the budget item, just to say that, you know, based on the comments, you know, from you, Nicola, I can't quite understand why the budget that we're going to get on to doesn't reflect that position, because there just seems to be a bit of a mismatch between the advice in the budget paper for the CJC and the advice covering the SDP from my perspective. But that's a comment, and I can pick that up in the budget process.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Percy, for that. Well, luckily now the main man is here for the budget, so we can get on to that shortly. Thank you, Chris. You've joined us. I appreciate you. We've moved things around a little bit, but we're nearly there. Did anyone else have any questions on this item? No. So I can't see any hands raised. Oh, thank you, Nicola. Did you want to come back in?
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to say, the question was raised earlier on about the letter. A letter has been drafted in response to your letter to the Joint Committee, so we will be issuing that today.
Thank you. We look forward to receiving it. You know, I liken it to having a pen pal. It's really quite, you know, the communication between the committees is quite frequent these days. I'm sure we remember having a pen pal back in the day. Anyway, we look forward to that. Thank you, Nicola. Right. Okay. So moving. So I think we have to note the report. So we note the report, and we move on to the. Am I right now? Item 6, Alison. Is that correct? Have I missed one?
You can go to item 6, Chair, but given that Chris Moore's in attendance, I don't know if you want to go straight to the budget. You can go back to item 3.
Let's do that, because yeah, why not? Let's strike while the iron's hot. We'll go back to item 3 then. Chris, over to you, please, for the budget. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Russell, and board of our members, and thank you for the indulgence of moving the agenda around. Unfortunately, I had anticipated Steve covering the meeting this morning, but he's on sick, so I've had to jump into it and jump out of a budget consultation meeting with the unions, which I'm not sure which is the best, but that's besides the point. But so thank you for doing that anyway. That was helpful. So the budget is the report is placed before you today. As part of the budget consultation, there's a requirement on the CJC to set the budget by the end of January. We have had a number of meetings with the members of the CJC and officers in terms of trying to build this budget up, and it is a challenging budget because CJCs, as you're aware, is developing. The requirements are changing, but as a consequence of anything that we do on the CJC and how much budget provision we put in, that really falls back then on the actual county councils, and the county councils, I'm sure you've all been briefed, are struggling with budgets at the moment and have been for a number of years recently, and I think it'll probably continue in the future where there's not enough funds to go around. So there are challenges all around, and I think certainly the CJC committee is very conscious of the trying to control the liability that may fall back on the individual authorities. So by way of background, last year, the members or the CJC decided on putting a budget forward, which actually managed the service provision to the extent that was needed this year, but actually they brought in a strategy to use some of the reserves over the next 3 years to keep the overall levy down. And that was put in place during the year and has proved to be workable. Some of the work on the actual CGCs, on the individual work streams, has possibly not advanced as quickly as possible, but also we've had some additional funding coming from Welsh Government. You will recall that we had money towards the transport plan, the regional transport plan, of 125,000 in 23-24 and 100,000 in 24-25. And eventually, the Welsh Government did commit to putting 200,000 forward for the regional transport plan for 25-26. As we stand at the moment, as we understand it, there's 100,000 that is likely to continue into 26-27. And also, Welsh Government committed during the year to a £200,000 grant for capacity and capability improvement of the CJC, and that was a commitment for 3 years, which is coming on board. Part of that actually linked in to some extent to the fact that actually we now have appointed a chief operating officer, and whilst not started, is due to start. And I'm sure that when you've got a full-time chief operating officer, more resources will go into to developing the CGC in the manner that it needs to be developed. And so this year we looked at 2 options. We looked at the requested budget and an option 2 then, which was the requested budget, but actually with a minimal level of strategic planning. And I sense that actually coming in on the end of the conversation that was something that possibly has been talked about with Nicola earlier, and is probably one of the most evidential part with slightly different. So the requested budget, if we'd actually included everything that was requested, would have had an estimated expenditure of 1.7 million, which was a substantial increase of about 900,000 over and above 25-26, which included the regional management office. It included the salary of the chief operating officer. It included the grant from the capacity and capability grant, and it included the various other support mechanisms, including the governance, the democratic, the Section 151 monitoring officer, etc. The work stream then also included money. So within the work stream head, then we also included money for economic well-being and a dedicated staff member to develop those plans forward and to develop the local energy plan forward in the same manner. And that's detailed within my report. The consideration was given around this strategic development plan in terms of what was required. And as Nicola is pushing very hard, continues to push towards getting funding for the officers from Welsh Government as part of their function. And that is something that is ongoing at the moment. So the thought process was the same as actually some of the transport grant that we received, is curtail the sort of bid there and came up with an option 2, which is the requested budget with a minimum strategic planning allocation at the moment. And part of that is to allow for the opportunity to push further with Welsh Government in terms of their overall position and what they really want us to do with planning. Challenge, I think, to me around the CJC is that Welsh Government put the legislation in place. They expect it to be delivered, but then the delivery is funding generally coming off the local authority. And I think that is a challenge, certainly from my point of view, because of the cost. So after some detailed discussion, the CJC officers considered two options. One was the restricted budget, one was the full allocated budget. And you can see on page 10 of the report the differential in terms of the overall position, which would push the levy up significantly should they go for the full value of the 1.2 million. Again, bringing in together the strategy that was actually utilised previously around the use of reserves. That continues to be a policy that is being adopted by the members, or suggested to be adopted, where we get a contribution and we draw. It's an increase in value, but 167, 182 and 197 from balances, reducing balances over the 3 years. Holding the balances is a recommendation because CJCs are still developing. We're not clear 100% in terms of the full resources that are required, and it allows scope to change things during the year. Like, for instance, at this point last year, we would have not concluded that a chief operating officer was the appropriate path to go. We were able to do that, and we were able to do that due to the funding that was forthcoming. So within the 4 work streams, you have the proposed indicative budget, which I'm now on Appendix B, which allows for economic and energy at 187,000, planning at the minimum 21,000, transport 52,000 and 100,000, 152, bearing in mind some of that is coming from the grants that are provided. And then we hold a 50,000 form of contingency for planning and development, depending on where those work streams go during the year. So this is the proposal. The net position is a £1.1 million budget, less the grants 320,000, which meant that actually we've able to sort of achieve a slight uplift in the actual levy, but not a significant amount, with a contribution coming from reserves. So as an example, Pembrokeshire will go from 191,000 this year to 232. Carmarthenshire 151 to 176. Sorry, I've misread those. Sorry. Swansea is going from 191 to 232. Carmarthenshire is going from 151 to 176. Neath and Talbot 114 to 132, and Pembrokeshire 99 to 116. So the slight increases, accommodating everything that we need to do, with the exception of some challenges around the planning. But within the planning, there is still some significant dialogue to be undertaken with Welsh Government before we conclude where we go with that direction. So that is obviously a quick overview. The individual work streams, I can't comment that I'm actually the most competent to talk about the full detail on that, because obviously those detailed work streams are with the professional officers in their fields. There's been quite a lot of dialogue with those officers, and I notice certainly Nicola is still online in terms of where the planning one is, but that is the recommendation. The alternative would have been Appendix A, which would have seen some significant increases of levies, which would have been double the value. And it's just felt at this point in time, while we landed on the other recommendation, is that is probably unsustainable for the individual constituent authorities. So, Chair, at that point, as I say, thank you for switching the agenda around. Happy to try and take any questions. Diolch.
Okay, diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much, Chris, for that. And notwithstanding the comment you made about the individual streams, I'm sure there may be some questions.
Yeah.
And I'll hand over, but I can't see any hands up yet, Chris. So I'm filibustering to see if anyone wants to come in or not. Anyone got a question? Oh, Councillor Percy. There we are. Look at that. as if I knew it was coming.
Can always rely on
there we
go. Yeah, look, I'm not going to repeat the comments I made earlier on in the meeting in relation to the SDP, but I'll make perhaps a more general comment around the budget, and one I have made previously, but I think is well worth saying. And you know, that is, you know, I understand the reluctance to increase the levies on the local authorities, or at least to budget for the risk of that, because we have seen grants coming in, you know, within financial years that have offset some costs, haven't we? Actually, throughout the lifetime of the CJC. But my concern is, and has been from the start, that because we've been limiting the activity of the CJC, that we're actually not getting good value for money for the money we are spending. There's a lot of fixed costs associated with the CJC that we are paying, and by not going perhaps that little bit further and seeing the CJC deliver, whether that is the SDP, whether that was, you know, other the regional transport work and etc. It's just a little bit of a concern that, you know, this approach is delaying delivery of these elements a little, or at least adding uncertainty, if nothing else. And in the meantime, we're spending money on the bare bones structure of the CJC and the admin costs and all of that, and not really achieving very much. And that's been my position, I will say, from day one, when the CJC set its do minimum budget, and I was critical of it at the time then. And I feel I need to make that comment again, because I understand where we're coming from here, but given, you know, what's been said around the development of the SDP, I just feel like if we can give a little bit of certainty to move that along, that would be a good thing. But yeah, that's my view, and I appreciate it is my view.
Thank you, Councillor Percy. Chris, just before you come back, I think it's an interesting question in terms of, you know, in terms of the with the chief operating officer in place now, you know, would they be arguing, you know, if they were here, would they be arguing for us to go for that other budget option, which obviously as members we'll be reluctant to see a levy increase, right, in for each of our constituent authorities because of the pressures that you're fully aware of, and we are, thanks to your briefings on the budget. But just, you know, in order for the CJC to be effective, does it not need to be that little bit extra funded to be more effective? Because I think Sean's point is valid in terms of, actually, if you've got a CJC, you've got fixed costs of all the requirements and everything, just having that little bit extra funding would allow it to do its job better. So thank you.
I think Councillor Percy makes some, you know, valid comments, and you know, I think one of the things certainly officers and some of the key members have been sort of struggling with is where the direction of the CJC is going in the future, and what it will and won't develop. And I think your comment over the sort of governance and the structure around it, I think, is valid, because I think, you know, members could also be asking is how much could have this been done without actually the legislation of the government and the governance and the actual structure that we've got in place, and could we have achieved it without any of that from working together? And I think that is probably one of the fundamental positions. But unfortunately, we've got the legislation, or fortunately, depending where you are, that we've got the legislation in place, and the legislation does dictate that. What I would say is that I think through some of the lobbying that CJCs have been done across Wales, not just here, over the last couple of years, certain additional grants have actually come from Welsh Government, which has helped to support the situation, which then meant that the burden hasn't fallen back on the residents of the individual authorities. And I think that is quite an important feature to certainly work with. But actually, we are moving forward into a slightly different angle, in the fact that, you know, we're going to have a chief operating officer. That chief operating officer going to have this 100% time on the CJCs. There is an element of dialogue going on, as you well know, in terms of how the Swansea Bay City deal and the CJC merge, and what efficiencies will actually deliver. So there's a lot of moving parts that are going to take place over the next 6 months. And I think if we come 6 months into the year and there is a conclusion that we need to we're not going to get any money from Welsh Government and we need to push ahead, well, the committee could certainly consider reallocating a bit of the money or using a bit of money for reserves to refocus to start moving on some of the parts that actually aren't moving at the moment. So I think there are options there to consider further during the year. The question is, are we informed enough to actually allocate that money at the moment is the bit that I probably would say probably not. So you know, if there's an element of reassurance there that actually once we get 6 months into the year, we could revisit and we could change things as long as we're committed to next year and what we're going to need next year. I think there's options there. I don't know whether that's helpful in some shape.
No, thank you very much, Chris. I think it is helpful, and you know, it reflects, I think, officer and member frustration and also, you know, ambition at the same time for what the regions can do together. But yeah. Thank you. Councillor Percy, did you want to come back in again?
I don't think I've got anything further to say on the topic, Chair, so I'll leave it there.
No, okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Percy. I've just muted myself when I was meant to bring you in there, Councillor Cundy. Sorry, so apologies. You've been even more patient than you had to be. Would you like to come in now?
You're helping me on my patience training. Thank you. Very kind of you, Chair. Thank you very much indeed, Chris, for the report. I think basically, I mean, on the SDP is ridiculous. 21k is not going to cover that by any means. It's just not going to. And I have to say, I think around the whole process, it's really bad. I think the point that this committee actually made a very valid point about there not being enough money for planning, and purely because if we don't accept it, we lose funding, is not, in my opinion, a really good way of going forward. But that's perhaps within the machinations. I would agree that basically, I think that we should be looking at the 1.6 million in reserves if we need to later in the year, if that's where we have to go. I don't know if I've got my figures right there, but that would be it. But I have to say I am very disappointed in us not getting this funding for the SDP. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cundy. Chris, would you like to comment directly on that?
Only comment I'd make, just for the record, I know it's difficult to pick up all the figures, but the expected balance brought forward into 26-27 is 1.3, and when we start discharging the funding next year, it'll be 1.1. So I know the principle of what Derek's saying is 100% right. I just wanted the figures to tie in with what's actually on the report. So, you know, we are anticipating moving the funding down over the next couple of years, but actually on year 3, we will still have 700,000 there that we could utilise some of it for the SDP if we so desire when we're in a position to do so.
Okay, thank you, Chris. We have, as a committee, expressed our frustration at the fact that you have to go ahead with the development plan for the SDP without full funding for it. And we look forward, as I've mentioned already, to our response on our letter back from the CJC with the reasons for that decision. In the meantime, Councillor Howlett.
And that will, any comments here will be fed into the meeting next week anyway, so the members will be fully aware anyway. Thank you, Chris.
Sorry, Councillor Howlett. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chair. Thank you. Obviously, listening with interest to the comments. I agree with Councillor Percy in terms of his comments on this item, and also interesting to hear Mr. Moore saying, could we have worked together as authorities and come out with a similar or better solution, as it were, or resolution. I voiced my concerns about this whole process since earlier from the time I've been on this committee. I look for value for the taxpayer, and I appreciate this is early days. I appreciate the tie-up with the Swansea Bay City deal might bring, and hopefully will bring, better outcomes and better cost savings. But the jury's out for me whether this whole process is just, I'll say it, a glorified talking shop, to be honest. I'm not seeing any real at the moment, I'm not seeing any real outcomes. You know, Mr. Moore did say that not to ask much more money from the local authorities, and that additional money has come from Welsh Government. But obviously, you know, I respectfully point out that some taxpayer somewhere has paid that money we're getting from the Welsh Government.
Agreed.
So you know, I just think that this whole concept is, well, I don't know where I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I'm not sure we're going to get the outcomes here. I hope we do, for the benefits of the people, the taxpayers that are paying, but I'm not entirely sure. So, you know, I'm not asking for a response at all. My views, I've stated them on a number of occasions. I hope for the best. That's what I'll say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Howlett. I think, yeah, as with Councillor Bursey, you've both expressed these concerns in the past. Chris, did you want to make a comment, or are you happy?
I don't think I need to make a comment. I think Councillor Howard has expressed a view, and you know, it's not for me as an officer to comment really either way. But although I think I may have provoked it.
Well, okay, thank you. And so, yeah, we're in a position where we have a budget that we, I think we're asked to support probably.
Yes, there is the recommendation on page 3 of the agenda pack.
Yeah, as in, so we've got the recommendations. Has anyone got any, before we go to that, has anyone got anything else they'd like to say? No. Okay, so we're happy to support the budget as it stands. Is anyone happy to propose that we do that? Don't all shout at once.
So, sorry,
okay, Councillor Davis.
I propose.
Oh, go on, Chris. Thank you.
Reluctantly, I suppose.
I don't know. I was wondering whether you were endorsing it with the reservations around the planning.
Okay, thank you for that contribution, Chris. That's helpful. Perhaps maybe that's what we should do, is endorse it with our pre-existing worries about the affordability of the planning and the commitments to the planning. Is that something, Derek, you want to come in?
Yes, I propose that we endorse it with our concerns over the planning, as we have already.
Okay, so Councillor Davis, you happy you propose that, and or to second Councillor Cundy in that way? Is that okay? Reluctantly, as you said before. Yeah. All right. I'm going to go to a vote then on that basis, Alison, that we're going to recommend it, but with our reservations. Promote. Can you raise your hands electronically if you're in support of that, please?
1, 2, 3.
Please make sure you vote if you're in favour.
So I can see 4, 5 in favour, Chair.
5 in favour. Okay.
I'll abstain, please, Chair.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll just see if anyone's against it first. Okay. Anyone against? I'm trying to lower my hand. Teams are trying to do it for me. So sorry. Bear with me. Are you against there, Councillor Pursey? Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So we've got 1 against. Sorry, Councillor Baker. Were you against as well?
No, I think Councillor Baker voted in favour, Chair.
In favour.
So I've got 5 for, 1 against, and I've got 1 abstention. Is that correct?
1 abstention from Councillor Howlett. Is that correct?
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you,
Chair.
That's all
so
done.
That's supported with the addition of other reservation concerns around the planning, Chair.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Sorry, can I just request, as we're online, Alison, the meeting's next week sometime. Could you do a draft note for me on the minute by the meeting so that we can share it?
Yes, I will, Chris, no problem.
Okay, diolch. And thank you for your indulgence. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. So we
now go to agenda item 6, Chair, the corporate plan priorities.
Thank you.
Chair,
Alison.
is there any objection if I drop back off to go back to the other meeting now? Thank you.
Say hello to the unions for us, will you please?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Right then, so Christy, I think you're taking this item, is that correct, on corporate plan?
Yeah, that's right.
Fire away.
Great. So in terms of what we've already covered, I think from Chris's report, we undertook a workshop with officers in November to review the corporate plan objectives, where there are 3 of them covering economic development and energy, regional transport and strategic planning and land use. So as a part of that review, we looked at the objectives to see if there was any change and did they remain fit for purpose. And again, officers advised that there was no change and that they were, again, fit for purpose. So in that case, we're not going to require to go back to consult on those objectives. But what we are doing and what we have started to do now is to review the actions against those objectives, really. So within that report, so I'm trying to catch up on my side here. I got too many documents open, sorry.
That's fine. I thought my line had frozen there for a second, so you're okay. Don't worry, take your time.
So as I mentioned, we're going to Corporate Joint Committee on the 27th to share really what those priorities look like. So the purpose of the report really is to ask for your endorsement. And again, if I can just draw your attention to a correction and item 2 under proposed actions. It's a typo there on my error. And item 2, page 6, and it's under the SDP. The typo relates to regional local development plans, where it should be actually termed as being, I got your replacement of the local development plans. So again,
whereabouts that on the page? Where's that on the page? Sorry, Christy?
Sorry, it's page 6 on your document, and it's under strategic development plan wellbeing objective 3 with associated steps and actions, and it's point 3, following approval of the DA process to commence work on the SDB to continue to collect robust evidence for the, it says, regional local development plans, where it should actually read replacement local development plans across the region to inform the SDP.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Replacement local development plans, RLDPs. I hadn't learned RLDP yet, so that's a new one anyway. So, you know, I've got it right in the first place. Thank you. Thank you for that.
So again, the purpose of the workshop, we've undertaken them now annually in November, and it does aid really to make sure that we are progressing, and it also enables then the budget setting process as well. So thereafter, we will be going through those actions in detail. So we have individual action plans that will be shown in the corporate plan. So we aim then to bring back details of those actions then with the ongoing objectives to committee back in March then as a part of revision 4 of the corporate plan.
Okay. Has anyone got any questions? Yeah, Councillor Percy, sorry.
Yeah, again, it's only a sort of a high level one more than anything, rather than anything specific in the plan. When I read through the actions in here, obviously some of them, well, they're all subject to the level of funding available, and therefore, if we go back to our previous conversation, you know, the level of ambition in the budget setting process. What this action plan doesn't do is separate out those actions by their priority to the CJC within that document. And it's just a comment from me, really, that it might be useful in future iterations. I know these are our priorities, but if it was clear what the priorities are within that, how they're ranked, or even if they're in 2 categories, whether there's a first set and a second set or something like that. I just think it might be helpful for us to understand that when we're looking at this document. But it's just a comment, because if you read it alongside all the other things and all the discussions we've had, I think the members of the Scrutiny Committee would understand it. But I think if a member of the public read it, they might not necessarily realise quite what's going on around this document and the budget and the grants and all the other things it's subject to. So it's just that comment I wanted to make, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Percy. Can I just check then? So do you mean like more of a narrative in the document to explain the priorities a little bit more, so it's more public facing, friendly facing? Is that what you mean?
Well, no, to use some slightly awkward language, I'm talking about prioritising the priorities in the document. If I look at energy and there's a big list of things that we're going to do, we're going to establish this, we're going to develop this. If you look at the SDP item, we're going to go ahead and deliver it, aren't we? But when we look at the budget setting process, there's obviously a sort of moderating the level of ambition there, isn't there, at times? And I just feel like it might be helpful when we set in this to understand actually what are maybe the baseline things we're wanting to deliver, and what are maybe the more aspirational things we want to deliver. If that makes sense.
So yeah, that makes a bit more sense. So then if we've got the 3 priorities, right, and then you're effectively saying you want to score the sub points within that in terms of how important they are, like giving them weighting, is it something
along those lines? I just think it might be worth considering, given that I wouldn't expect that everything gets delivered, and there seems to be a lot of uncertainty, and I just think given that uncertainty, understanding what might be top of the list, I think would be really useful. Just at a glance in the document, I wouldn't want to make it unwieldy, and I wouldn't want to make a really difficult amount of work for officers. But even if it was just 2 categories, I just think it might be helpful.
Maybe a highlighter. They could highlight the ones that they thought were important. It's an interesting point, Councillor Percy. Thank you, Christy. What do you think on that?
Thank you for the feedback. Really much appreciated, because again, that detail we've already got within the corporate plan in the format of an action plan. So there are sort of details in there, but again, we've got time to modify really that layout ahead of March before we sort of provide that revision for then. And again, we are open to feedback, and you are quite right. If our documents need to be reformatted to make sure that it is sort of highlighting really the detail of what everybody needs to read, we're open to those suggestions then.
Okay, thank you, Christy. I certainly agree with Sean. I think it would help to understand what the CJC really prioritises in the slightly awkward language that Councillor Percy used, prioritising the priorities. I see that. I understand exactly what he's saying. It would be helpful for the public, I think, as much as anything, to show the key areas that the CJC is trying to achieve. But anyway, any other questions? No, right, okay.
So there is a recommendation, Chair, that you need to vote on.
Yeah,
on page 3.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. You took the words right out of my mouth. We're voting left, right, and centre here. Anyone happy to propose that we, apart from with the recommendation again that we look at how to prioritise the priorities? Are we happy to recommend this as it stands? Anyone?
Yeah, we're happy to support, Chair.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Percy. Anyone seconding? Councillor Baker, thank you. So can we all vote, please, if we're happy to support this as it stands?
I can see 6 in favour, Chair, of the 7 members present.
6 in favour. Okay. And anyone against? And any abstentions?
Someone hasn't voted, Chair, because there's 7
Someone
members.
hasn't voted.
Yeah,
okay.
You vote, Chair.
I voted.
Yeah,
I was what was I? Oh yeah, no, I was in favour. Just kidding.
I was raising my hand, so it might have been me.
Right, there we are, Councillor Jenkins.
Okay,
You were
just to
voting
clarify,
in favour. There we are. Thank you, Councillor Jenkins.
There we are then. Just to clarify, nobody's vote's been missed. That's perfect. Thank you. Excellent. And so thank you for that item. Thank you, Christy, for that. That's excellent. So if we can move on to the next item, which is agenda item 7. Alison, is there anything to add to our comments on the forward work programme last week?
I don't have any updates at this moment, Chair.
No. Okay, thank you. So anyone got any comments on the forward work programme? No. I'm going to move on then. Urgent items. Under urgent items, I was going to raise the letter, but we discussed it already. We look forward. We've had confirmation this morning. There's been a draft from Nicola, and we look forward to receiving our letter from our pen pal. Thank you. So then we didn't need to use item 9 with access to meetings because it wasn't relevant to talk about item 10. So I think we're at the end of the meeting. I'd like to thank you all for your patience this morning. I think we've covered the areas thoroughly though, and hopefully that was helpful for the CJC. I look forward to seeing you at the next meeting, and enjoy the rest of January. Thank you very much, everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you, Chair. Bye.